Okay. Well, I'll introduce this as the EDU 530 project management interview assignment from St. Leo University for the MSID program. And I have Marianne Kerrigan live here online. And Marianne, why don't you explain your name, obviously we know your name, your title, and your current employment.
Okay, hi, I'm Marianne Kerrigan. I am the ICT coach at Wiregrass Ranch High School here in Florida. The title itself stands for Information Communication and Technology Coach. I know that the term also means other things. I think other schools call it something else, but generally speaking, that's what it is. The district created this position about a year ago. They believe that there was a need to increase the capacities of the school's staff and the students in the school in regard to using technology in the classrooms. And so what they were hoping is that the ICT coaches would do was to provide training and resources not only to teachers but to students. And additionally, the role that we also function as is communicating any district objectives, such as things essential to the Common Core curriculum. Not only do we sort of communicate, we provide the training for that, and we construct the training. And I have a cohort that I work with. For example, I've created trainings ranging from helping teachers to create specific lessons using a technology such as iMovie, Vocaroo, something called Nearpod, and also I've done trainings on some of the shifts in the Common Core standards. As well as my new project right now that I'm working on is creating and helping staff use creating an instructional course for them in our new learning management system. And now we've switched to something called Canvas, which is now predominantly being used in many of the colleges and community colleges surrounding our high school area. So that's pretty much what I do right now.
Great. Now, what kind of training or education have you completed specifically to prepare you for this job and also for the project management skills needed for your job?
Well, that's interesting. First and foremost, I think that in order to even function in my position as an ICT coach, I had to have knowledge and ease with understanding new technologies. Aside from the instructional experience that I brought as a high school teacher, my educational background included attending an accelerated program years ago when I lived in Maryland for computer programming. And I attended this program that we actually spent 30 credit hours on learning computer programming, application of some of them, plus the idea of actually understanding how a computer functions. Because of this and in my instructional background as a teacher, I think that I brought a sort of an ease in using technology that a lot of others didn't have. As far as my project management, I think that ties a lot to the fact of just being a teacher. I think a lot of that sort of taught the idea from beginning to end and working with objectives and sort of almost functioning in a classroom as managing instruction and sort of gaining resources or finding people that I could add to help my instruction in the classroom. I think that ties into it. Plus, personally, I've also functioned sort of coordinating on projects when I worked years ago. I used to work on in architectural design, and there was so much project management related to that from cost analysis that I participated in that process. So I think that ties. But lastly, I think the biggest part right now is that I'm attending and participating in the instructional design program at St. Leo.
Awesome. And what types of instructional design projects specifically for instructional design have you managed? I think you maybe touched on a few that you've already spoken about.
The last one I managed for our school was a series of our high school trainings for some of the Common Core shifts that have occurred. And what that means is that there were 3 basic shifts identified related to Common Core when it came to the reading standards. and that's happened in every subject area, particularly reading, math, and sciences, but three were identified just specifically to reading, and so the shift was occurring from Florida Sunshine State Standards to the Common Core State Standards, and there were three big shifts, and I managed three trainings about these shifts at our school. One part of the training I completed and instructed myself. One part I reviewed the training, but I didn't create or instruct, but rather was done by my ICT coach, my cohort. And the last one, I actually worked hand in hand with the SME, and she finished up the last training. And we created that together, but she actually did the presentation of it with the staff.
Okay. Now, what did you find to be the most challenging aspect of staffing that instructional design project?
The most challenging part was selecting the appropriate people for the project. I think that's part of it, and selecting them and addressing any competing issues in project design or objectives due to their expertise. For instance, when I was working with the SME, she wanted to tell me how to do everything, and I had to continually redirect the conversation to keep it focused. The other one was also to get a buy-in from my cohort, was the other ICT coach, and sort of make sure that we were on the same page about what the objectives were. But I think that was making sure that she was a good fit as much as I was a good fit for my part, and I felt that SME at the end was actually a good culmination. So I think that's all that is, the pacing and assigning the appropriate tasks to the staff.
Okay, based on their experience levels and then also compromising, it sounds like.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, what do you feel is your most valued skill? Now, this can be from your own perspective or from the perspective of a boss or a supervisor.
Oh, I think that's hard oftentimes to sort of want to hear that from people when they kind of identify your skill and they criticize you as well. But I think my ability to comprehend big picture ideas or overall objectives quickly, I think that my supervisor would say that I kind of get it and I can see the beginning and end. I personally believe my valued skills that relate to project management are my thoroughness, my ability to sort of see where there are conflicts and unforeseen challenges, and being able to decipher and prioritize well.
Now, what do you feel as far as project management? What are some areas you feel you need the most improvement in as far as those skills?
I think the hard part for me is that I tend to see, it sounds maybe sort of bragging, it's not, but I tend to see so many details, even though I can see the big picture as well. And I think for me it's trying to keep it simple and scaling down the project is oftentimes. And I think the hardest part is, because I can be detailed oriented, is just trying to keep things on schedule and limit information from time to time. I think that's the hardest part, is sort of sifting through information and keeping it simple, and also keeping therefore to a time schedule. I think that's the hardest part for me, and I definitely need improvement in.
Well, and I think that might be the case for a lot of designers, just because they're so passionate about what they're doing, that sometimes you get so involved in the wanting to include every aspect into a project that it's hard to know what to call out.
Right, that's really, really hard. Honestly, I find that the hardest part is just to make it as clean, and to get out what's not essential. Even though I'm good at it, I tend to see the meaningfulness of every little part of it, so it's hard to let go of that.
Right, to pick and choose.
Right.
Now, what do you feel is maybe the most important component of a good project communication plan?
That's a good question. I think that I personally don't think there's anything that is more important than another, because honestly, I think that if one part fails, another part fails. If one lack of communication occurs in one area, it affects the other area, and then sort of they all get contaminated. It sort of bleeds into each other. I think that listening and hearing is the most important part. Feedback and reflection also stands out as most important. when you think that you're being clear with people and you think you're getting your point across, sometimes you aren't. And I think that part is to be able to step back from that in your communication and allow for that a little bit, for sort of time for miscommunication. I think that's important. That sounds weird, but that's allow for sort of that part in the project.
That's a good point, and I had not thought about that before, is to allow the possibility of miscommunication.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a famous quote by George Bernard Shaw about um, the issue with communication is believing it even took place in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So
Exactly.
that's kind of, I guess, where you have to kind of prepare in advance for that inevitability that the communication is going to not go as planned.
Right.
And so you think that is the most challenging aspect of the project communication, is just that possibility?
That possibility, yeah, definitely. There is that possibility. No question about it. One thing is that uh, I was thinking about when you were saying that is my brain just went blank. But um, one thing I learned, and this is weird, I watched this me when I was interviewing them. They also were summarizing the interaction we were having. So at the end, we sort of can recapture what was essential and what we discussed. And them doing it as well as me doing it, but I was able to hear what they thought was more essential than what I thought. And I thought that was very interesting, what they took away as being the most important part of what we discussed as compared to what I thought was very interesting. And so, and this is tying back to the most challenging, is gaining consensus on what it was that we actually achieved and where we're both going from there forward. And I think that's a big part of just kind of reflecting and making sure that you're both on the same page, and coming to that consensus about where we are and what we achieved and where we're going, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a really awesome strategy to
Mm-hmm.
use, to just have them reiterate what they heard and what
Right,
their understanding is, because like you say, everybody comprehends things differently,
right,
and they're going to pull away from it what's important to them, not necessarily what's important to you.
right.
Interesting. That's a really good strategy. I'm going to have to keep that one in mind.
Yeah.
Now, do you anticipate like any trends or changements in the project management capabilities of future instructional design projects? I mean, is there something like new instructional designers should be aware of coming down in the future that you can think of?
I tend to be a cynic when it comes to businesses, and sort of, I don't think businesses always have the best intention, and they may not be good. And I say this sort of to lead into my response for the first part of this, and that because companies are so driven by their resources, time and money, and in their construction of good instructional design, it may be compromised due to these constraints. And because of that, I don't know if they're always going to hire the best and the brightest, or they may create the instructional design may reflect a shoddy or poorly created project, and I don't always think that's necessarily the reflection of the instructional designer, but rather the needs of the company. But I think, as somebody on the outside, I think the trend might be that the instructional design may look poorer because of that. And it's hard to separate, was it because of the time constraints and money, or was it because of the instructional design? So I think that's going to kind of be there, and that may seem weird, but I just have that sort of sense of sort of a negativism about instructional design that I hope doesn't happen, but I think it might be driven by that. The other thing is, I clearly see from my own experience and from what I'm aware of happening around, certainly in the educational field, is the use of technology skills, that project management capabilities of future instructional designers, is that they have to have some really good knowledge on technology and web-based type trainings. And if they don't have those, then they have those resources available to them that they can call upon when they're working those type of projects or have those needs in their project or in their instructional design. And the big trend that I clearly see is the efficiency of using smaller devices, such as your mobile devices, your smartphones, and your tablets, to actually present or be the platform in which you're actually are getting the instruction. And I just think that that trend is going to become more prominent. And I don't know where that's going to lead, other than I think instructional designers, project managers, all of them should be skilled in some ways on those platforms. And so the question becomes, do project managers, do instructional designers also get additional certifications to become project managers? Like, should instructional designers have management certifications, because they're tied so much together, even when you see job postings, or technology certifications? And so because the demand of instructional design relies so much on them today. So those are couple of things. And then being aware, from my own experience and also from the experience of what you read, is that the audience is changing. We're having a larger, broader audience for whatever we're designing, and it's because probably of the platforms that are available can reach more people at one time. And I think, that is a big change. So I think being aware of understanding the learner better, and what is learning, plus the actual target audience needs culturally. So those are my big overall trends, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree too. And that can be, you're looking at smartphones and tablet platforms.
Right.
You're looking at various screen sizes and navigation issues and all of that sort of thing that really somebody with a technology background would have to address, I would assume.
And you think about the visual implications too, that what works in one environment is not visually going to work in another environment. And so all those things might be considered, because I know that a lot of people out there don't realize that you need different programming for different platforms. Like, if you're going to see it on your cell phone, it's very different than the way somebody would design for a computer, just a laptop, because of the limitations of a smartphone or so on, or the size of it. It's just interesting that people are going to have to pay attention to that more, I think, of where is it going to be displayed. I think that's a trend that's going to be out.
Well, and that and access to, like you're saying too, learning is now everywhere. It's not limited to a classroom setting or a specific time period, because we have all these open source resources available to us now. That is, like you're saying too, going to impact how we view culture when we're designing programs and all. Very good points. Very good points. Now, any specific advice for instructional designers who are new to managing a project?
The bottom line is, from my experiences, you become more skilled through practice. I think what you don't do well at first, you'll do better later on. That is the bottom line. There's a very famous quote that a dancer, a ballet dancer, doesn't do well in the beginning, but at the end of it, they're great ballet dancers. I mean, they don't start doing it well. You start by putting yourself in that situation, and you'll learn as you do. And I think that's the biggest part, is to be patient.
That's very good advice. I appreciate that. Well, Marianne, thank you so much for all your excellent tips and observations. I really appreciate your time in completing this assignment with me. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. I know you've got a big project going on this summer, and you've been a huge asset to me, especially learning a lot from you on the technology side.
Well, it's been my pleasure.
I appreciate
it. Mutual. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.